Hello, this is Lady Boulay, and I hope you're having a great day. Thank you for your support. Thank you for subscribing to the channel. Thank you for your comments, and thank you for your thumbs up. Thank you for all you do to support the channel. And yes, we are commanded to love one another, whether we want to or not, or whether we agree with each other or not. Today, I'm talking about why it was a wise decision for Black Americans to decide to stay out of this situation with ICE and illegal deportation. That was a tragedy that happened in Minneapolis, Minnesota yesterday. A young woman lost her life. An ICE agent fired on her and she lost her life. And now it's just like when something happens in the Black community, you get conflicting reports about what happened because they're not going to admit they were wrong. And that is all the more reason why you should make a conscientious decision when you decide that you're going to be on the opposite end of law enforcement, because you could lose your life. The woman that was killed yesterday in Minneapolis is Renee Nicole Good, 37 years old, and the mother of a 6-year-old. So now the 6-year-old is going to have to grow up without her mother and with a painful memory of what happened to her. I'm going to let you listen to what Kristi Noem, who is the Secretary of Homeland Security, had to say about it.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. I want to start out by addressing the loss of life that we saw here in Minneapolis today. Any loss of life is a tragedy, and I think all of us can agree that in this situation it was preventable. I've spoken to the President today on the situation here on the ground. I also just got off the phone a little while ago with Governor Walz and spoke to him as well. I want to reiterate first with all of you the facts of what happened today. At 10:25 a.m. Central Time, Immigration and Customs Enforcement were carrying out lawful operations here in Minneapolis. Because of the adverse weather that Minneapolis has seen in recent snow, one of the vehicles became stuck and ensnared in the snow. Law enforcement were attempting to push out this vehicle, and when a mob of agitators that were harassing them all day began blocking them in, shouting at them, and impeding law enforcement operations. ICE officers and agents approached the vehicle of the individual in question, who was blocking the officers in with her vehicle, and she had been stalking and impeding their work all throughout the day. ICE agents repeatedly ordered her to get out of the car and to stop obstructing law enforcement, but she refused to obey their commands. She then proceeded to weaponize her vehicle, and she attempted to run a law enforcement officer over. This appears as an attempt to kill or to cause bodily harm to agents, an act of domestic terrorism. The ICE officer, fearing for his life and the other officers around him and the safety of the public, fired defensive shots. He used his training to save his own life and that of his colleagues. He was treated at a local hospital, has been released, and is now with family.
So there you have it right there. They've got the fix in. He was afraid for his life. Have we heard that before? Yes, we have. We've heard that before. And now I believe the Minnesota governor said that the Minnesota state won't have anything to do with that. That is going to be a federal case. So now you know what that means. That means that he is not going to be charged. Most likely, he will not be charged. Now, those people in Minnesota have been out in the streets carrying on ever since they said they were coming in to get the illegal immigrants and to investigate that fraud that's going on up there in Minnesota. But they were going to stand in the way of law enforcement. Now, I don't know what happened. I've seen several takes on it. I've seen the videos. But what I can say is that this was a good time for Black Americans not to be in the way. When we're not in the mix, it's good to see what happens. And we just saw what happened. And it's the same thing like in the South, when back in the day during the segregated days, when one white person would do something wrong and another white person would come in and call them out, they would turn on the white person that called them out. This is not new. That's what they do. So again, it was a good thing that Black Americans decided we are not going to be involved in this, because we would most definitely, because a Black man got sprayed. I don't know if it was tear gas. I don't know. It was something orange that police officer blasted in his face, because after the lady lost her life, he jumped up in the police officer's face and looked like, I don't know, it looked like he was going to fight or something. But he didn't shoot him. I don't think he tased him. It looked like it was some kind of yellow stuff that came out, or orange, but he shot it in his face. So this is not a time to be a hero. And I don't know that that was a Black American man. But if it was, that's what happens when you stand in the way of law enforcement. These ICE people, these people are authorized to do what they do. And if you get in the way, this is what can happen. So when I heard that, I was like, I am so glad that we made a decision not to get involved. They keep saying, well, this is just 4 blocks from where George Floyd got killed. They keep saying that. I'm not sure what the purpose of that is. But it's a tragedy, and I hate the woman lost her life. Now, they're up there in Minnesota now, all out in the streets and things, and we don't know how that's going to turn out. Because you do have the right to peacefully protest in America, but it has to be done peacefully. And remember, back in the 60s, when Dr. King, the whole thing was about nonviolent protest, and the police escalated. And they initiated violence against Black people with tear gas and billy clubs and dogs, and eventually bullets. So you don't have to really just be doing nonviolent protests to be attacked. But that's what they do. Now, either you have a right to be in this country or you don't. And either the United States government has the right to remove you from this country if you're here illegally, or they don't. So we have to come to terms as a nation as to whether or not the police has the right to enforce the law. Now, I don't know if that lady was in the wrong or not. Everybody keeps saying they could have done this, the police could have done that. The same thing they say when a Black person gets killed. Well, the police could have done this or they could have done that, but they didn't do it. And most of the time they get away with it. And that is how come you have to make a conscientious decision if you decide to get involved in something like this. You have to be aware of the fact you're going to come up against some police officer that's scared and nervous. He thinks you're going to make a move, so he makes a move on you first.
I'm not finna go into who was in the right, who was in the wrong with that Minnesota lady that lost their life. I'm not finna argue with y'all tonight. But I do know one thing. Y'all don't care about y'all kids enough like I care about mine. I'm not putting my life on the line for no stranger. I got somebody depending on me. My family's depending on me to come home every day. I'm not putting my life on the line for no strangers, yet alone people that's not even from here. If somebody told me ICE is coming to my city, which has already happened, I'm staying out the way. What do I look like going in the streets trying to protect people that's not even from here? Or whatever the situation is. They could be from here. I'm still not protecting a stranger in general. I got people depending on me. Don't forget that. So in this situation, they say ICE is coming to your city in Minneapolis to figure out what's going on with this Somali fraud. Thank you. Why in the world would I need to hit the streets and stop that? I don't know. I just know it don't seem like y'all care about y'all kids enough. I don't need my child to be fatherless. And I definitely don't need him to understand that he lost his father because his father was out there defending Somalis.
Westlake Street, Minneapolis.
I'm not sure how much good it's doing those people to be out in the streets screaming at law enforcement. Because either they have the right to remove illegal immigrants from the country or they don't. And I hear people saying, well, this is stolen land. This is stolen land. Well, it might be stolen land, but there's a one group of people that's clearly in charge of it. Why do you want to be here if it's stolen? Why do you want to be here illegally if it's stolen? Why don't you go back to your homeland where it's not stolen? But I think about this. What if they had been all out in the streets and fighting against slavery for those 246 years that our family members were enslaved? And they really were not here illegally. They were really brought here against their will. Why weren't they out in the streets fighting then? So this all seemed performative to me. It really does. But anyway, I'm glad Black Americans decided not to be a part of this. And I think it's quite interesting to see what will happen and what can happen if we're not there. It's very instructive. It's very telling. Okay. Thank you for listening. Let me know what you think about the video and have a good day.